Bean brings you new shows every Monday through Friday. We bring you the best personalities from across the racing world with extensive interviews, commentary, news, games, and more. The Barn is revolutionizing what horse racing radio can be, and you can hear new shows at BetAmerica.com or just search Bet America Radio Network on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, or iHeartRadio. Get in the Barn.
All right, back here on the Barn, the Bet America Radio Network, and pleased to welcome in our next guest, who is an apprentice rider who in just a month has already collected wins at Churchill Downs and Belterra Park. Crystal Connie is our guest. Crystal, how are you?
I'm really good, thanks, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you coming on the show. It's been a big month for you, so I want to talk about riding here in the U.S., but wanted to start with just your background a little bit and how you first got into racing. Were you kind of from a racing family?
Yeah, so I was born in Melbourne in Australia. Mm-hmm. My parents are from New Zealand, though, and both of my grandfathers actually trained horses in New Zealand, and both my parents were involved in that at an early age, but they sort of, Mum stuck with it a little more than Dad, mm-hmm. But they eventually kind of strayed away from the racehorses a little when they moved to Australia and sort of went in a different direction, but it was kind of always going to be something that I was probably going to do because it's bred into me a little bit.
What was your first memories of being around horses?
So I got a pony when I was 3 and learnt to ride. Mum taught me to ride, and we did the pony club thing, and I had show ponies and did all that, rode at the royal shows, and eventually I got more into jumping and eventing, and I evented pretty seriously for sort of my early teenage years into like my early 20s. Mm-hmm. I kind of got to the top level of that. I rode for Australia, and I had a pretty good run. And then I just started riding at the track to pay for my jumping horses, and ended up selling all the jumping horses and just going racing.
Is the discipline of riding similar in eventing? I mean, obviously they're two very completely different things, but is the basic horsemanship kind of the same, or are they just totally different disciplines?
No, there is similarities. For me, the racing didn't come as naturally as the equestrian side did. So for me, once I decided I seriously wanted to ride races, I basically had to give up the whole equestrian side of it and retrain myself to ride. Basically, it was difficult for me. It wasn't that natural, so I had to a lot of years and years of muscle memory and all that sort of thing that I had to sort of re-establish in a whole different seat and a whole different sort of style of riding. So for me, it was very different, but some people make the transition a little easier.
The process here in the U.S. for becoming a rider is mostly, you work as a gallop person and eventually transition into an apprentice. What is the process for becoming a rider in Australia?
Okay, so obviously you just start out galloping horses mm-hmm. and breezing horses, and then we have we call them barrier trials in Australia. So we call the gates barriers. So mm-hmm. They're like practice races. So mm-hmm. they might have. Sometimes we'll have a bigger field, maybe 10 horses, but often they're just like 5 or 6 horses, half a mile to 5 furlongs. And that's where you learn to ride races. It's in these little practice races that are unofficial, like they're recorded, but no one really watches them, and you can't bet on them or anything. And so you start to ride in those, and you have to complete 20 of those to the steward's satisfaction. So that might mean it might take you 30 before they're happy to let you ride in a race, or you might get it in your 20s straight away. But that's a good grounding. You get to go out there and ride in a field, and they don't sort of go as fast, and obviously it's not as competitive as riding in a race, but it gives you a good grounding for what's coming.
Do the stewards kind of work with you as you go through that process? Like after do they go over the videotapes with you? Do they say, hey, what were you thinking here? Because I know here in the States, the stewards do have those kind of we call them videos, where they'll go back with the riders and watch a video, just kind of ask what they were doing here, what they thought there. Is there kind of that feedback from them?
Absolutely. So you have a book that you've got to fill out as you're going, and the stewards have to sign off on each one as you go and approve it as you go. So you'll go and see them after you've done your trial, and they'll say, oh, look, you weren't very good out of the gate, or you let your horse run in here, things like that, and then they'll help you along the way. They're pretty tight on making sure that you're safe and ready to go. Like I got sent back and I ended up doing 30 before I started to ride. So they will they do try to look after you.
In Australia, I'm not 100% familiar with it, but from what I've gathered, it seems like there's kind of the quote-unquote city tracks, which are like the real big ones, and then there's more of like the country tracks. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Australia, we break it into 3 different kind of sections. So we have Metropolitan, which is, like Royal Randwick, Flemington, those kind of famous old race courses you would have heard of over here, which are comparable to Keeneland, Churchill Downs, that sort of class of racing. And then the next class we call Provincial, which is has to be within a certain miles of the actual metropolitan area, and they're usually sort of 2 hours max from the cities, and they're worth not quite as much money, but still decent. Like they're sort of still $20,000, $25,000 races. And then you have your country tracks, which are a bit cheaper racing and obviously out a bit further and cheaper horses and whatnot. But there's plenty of them, and they race a lot, and it's a really strong sort of community out in the country racing as well. So there's a lot of people out there that have carved really good careers just riding in the bush, as we call it.
Yeah, I work as a race caller as well, and I have some friends who are from Australia who are race callers now over here, and they talked about kind of starting out in the bushes and doing those races as they came up. I mean, and those smaller tracks, and even here in the States, they're great breeding grounds for people in all aspects of the business to work their way, because most folks don't start at Keeneland.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good system at home, and you have to ride a certain amount of winners and things on those country tracks before they'll let you come closer to town, like closer to the metropolitan. Like there's no way, like you see here, like the Thursday night I was able to ride at Churchill. There's no way that at home that I would have had that opportunity yet. Like they're a lot stricter on that. You've got to ride a certain amount of winners in the bush before they'll let you come and ride on the metropolitan track and things like that. So they try and stop you sort of making a fool of yourself, really.
Which might be good. At what point do you start to toy with the idea of maybe leaving Australia to come ride over here? Did you think about going anywhere else, or was USA kind of always your plan?
No, it was really just by chance that I ended up here. I took a little bit of time off. I'd stopped race riding at home, and I wasn't having much luck, and I got hurt and a few things, and I was sort of struggling a little, and I sort of gave it away basically, and didn't sort of know that I'd come back to it. And I came over here. I had a few friends over here that had moved to visit, so I just came over to see some friends for a little bit and travel around, and I ended up with my friends in Kentucky, and I noticed the racetrack, and I was like pretty excited to go in and see the track work in the morning. So I went in, and the next door neighbour we live with now, he actually put me in, and the first barn we walked into was Rusty's, and Rusty Arnold, and I had a chat to him and said, I'd love to just come in and ride one morning to see how you guys do it, and just for fun and whatever. And I went in and ended up riding for 6 weeks with Rusty, and he kind of said, well, would you ever race ride again? And I thought, well, I would actually. I'd probably like to get back to it. And that sort of started it, and Rusty sponsored me to get my visa and come back and ride. It's been a bit of a journey, but it's pretty cool. But it's totally random how it played out. It never crossed my mind to come and ride here ever.
That's crazy. That's still. And I know you spent a big chunk of the winter down in Florida, right? How did you enjoy it down there?
Yeah, so we spent 4 months down there for the winter at Palm Meadows, and it was awesome. It was nice to see another part of the country and live in Florida, and it was definitely nice to be out of the cold. When I was just looking at the temperatures at Keeneland and things, I was pretty happy to be down there.
Yeah, the no hills in Florida. I went down there for the first time in November. Like there's no hills in the whole state. It's just flat and marshy. But Palm Meadows it's something else. It's kind of like a little paradise, just a little north of Miami.
It is, yeah. It's a really nice spot. It's really horse friendly. The track's good. The weather's good, and we got a really nice barn there, and the horses were happy. And was like a little working vacay down there. We loved it.
Crystal Conning joined us here on the Bet America Radio Network. So you go back up to ride, you get back up to the Kentucky area, and Belterra Park a few weeks ago is where you end up riding your first race. Had you even been to Belterra before you took him out there?
No, I hadn't. So Rusty and I, when I kind of got back over here and said, let's just settle you in and get you going, and then we'll talk about getting you riding. So we was just galloping horses, and then we went to Florida, and I sort of thought, there's only the 2 tracks down there, and I'm pretty green still. So I said, look, I'm just gonna just work while we're down here. Let's talk about it when we get back to Kentucky. And Rusty sort of said, well, Belterra starts at the end of April. That's the perfect place for you to kick off. So we just had that goal sort of all winter that's where I'd start, and just worked out perfect when I got it back up here that there were horses ready to go there.
Yeah, it's a neat little track. I used to call the races there when it was River Downs, and I know Perry Utes is still kind of the king around there. Have you met Perry?
Yes, I have.
Yeah, I mean I think he's got to be like 65 or something now, but just a tough old warrior, and I think he's like in the top 10 all time of wins, and I do think it really is a good praise for a rider like you, because not only is Belterra there, Churchill's an hour and a half down the road, Indiana's 2 hours down there. I mean, there's 5 or 6 tracks there within a 3 or 4 hour thing, and so there's mounts to be had, I gotta think.
Yeah, absolutely. And Belterra is a really sweet little track. I actually really enjoy it there. They've redone it all really nice, and it doesn't feel like a casino. It feels like a country racing track, and there's a lot of families there. Doesn't matter if you ride there on the Thursday or the Sunday, there's always families, there's always a bit of a crowd, and everyone there's having a good time. But, it's a nice family environment, and the track's good, the surface is good, the track rides nicely. Like, I actually really like it, really enjoying going there. I went to Indiana one day last week as well, and I have to say I enjoyed Belterra probably the most. It's really cool little track.
It's a gem of a spot. Before I got the job there, I had never really even watched a race there, and I remember when I got there, I go, this is beautiful. I mean, it sits right in the river valley, and it's just a neat little spot. So I became aware of you last Thursday. We were doing our show, and we were looking at the Churchill Thursday card, and I'm looking, and I see Brian Lynch has got a horse, and we're talking about it. I said, I don't know who this rider Crystal Conning is. And so I watched the races, and not only do you guys win that race, but you win by like 10. That must have been pretty crazy winning at Churchill like that.
Yeah, that was super cool. I actually had a mount there the week before on the Thursday. I rode a 2-year-old there for Mark Hubley, and she just had no luck. She got flattened out of the gate, and she ran home really strong. So I'd sort of had one little experience at Churchill, and went out there on Thursday, and I've been getting on this horse every week and breathing him for Brian, and we'd been sort of trying to get him there, and the race kept not filling. So it had been a couple of weeks of anticipation, so I was really looking forward to riding that horse. But I had a bit of an opinion of him, but I didn't realise he was going to be able to do that. And when I got to the top of the straight and pushed the button, he just let rip, and there was not going to be anyone catching him, that's for sure.
Are the nerves a little bit more riding at Churchill than Belterra? I would assume they are, but maybe it's just a race is a race kind of thing. Not really. Like, the first night I rode there the week before, I was a little bit sort of edgy about it, but that was also only a 4th race ride as well. Yeah.
But another kind of week and a winner under my belt, and I was feeling a bit more confident about it all. It's nice to be able to just go there and enjoy the experience of being at Churchill and the history and the crowd, and you come out onto the track and you can look up at the Twin Spires, and it's pretty cool. It sort of feels like you're living your dream a little bit.
I remember walking through that tunnel the first time, my buddy going, it's kind of crazy to think who's all been through this tunnel, isn't it? And I was like, yeah, it really is.
Yeah, it's a very cool feeling.
So is your plan to stick around Ohio, Kentucky for the summer, for longer, or are you guys just kind of doing it day to day right now?
Look, at the moment, the plan is to ride the summer here. We've got Belterra all summer, and Churchill for another month, I think, and then Alice opens up, and then Keeneland, I guess, again in October. So fingers crossed I'm going good enough to stick around for those, and definitely going to try Target Alice. And yeah, I'm happy to stay here as long as I can, and if the opportunities keep coming, I'd love to stay here. I live with one of my best friends from home. She is a show jumper and she's moved over here, so I've got a good sort of support base here, and really enjoying it, so I'd like to try and stay here.
Yeah, that was going to be one of my last questions was, I know from working in the racing, you have to move a lot. And sometimes, at least for me, that's been one of the toughest parts because, you're just new places, you don't know people. And you guys obviously coming from halfway around the globe. Has that part been tough, or has it just kind of all been exciting, seeing all the new places and meeting new people?
I've been really lucky to have my friend Lauren and her partner Sean, who I just mentioned then. So they actually do the same migration to Florida. So I lived with them in Florida as well. They live 15 minutes from Palm Meadows with their jumping horses. Mm-hmm. So I think that's made it a lot easier, having that bit of grounding and having someone from home around. I think if I was over here totally alone to start off with, it would have been a lot tougher, because it is tough to make friends and do all that when you're working all the time and everyone's busy and all that sort of thing. So it's been really great to have those guys kind of as a support base and someone from where you're from that knows how you do things, because it's been culture shock as well. It's probably surprising to hear that, but it is a little different. So.
Oh yeah. Oh, believe me, I'm from Seattle. Kentucky was way different when I first went over there.
Yeah.
But, well, Crystal, I really appreciate you taking some time to join us. If folks want to find you on Twitter, you're at Crystal Conning, just at your name. Do you still follow the Australian racing at all from over here?
Yeah, I do. I keep a bit of an eye on it. I was working for a trainer in Melbourne called Robbie Griffiths when I was waiting for my visa, and I keep a pretty close watch on what those horses are doing that I was getting on, and my friends that are jocks at home. I keep a bit of keep tabs on what those guys are up to as well, and it's so easy now, I guess, with all the social media and everything to keep an eye on everyone. So yeah, I try and keep my finger in the loop, so I don't feel like I'm totally on the other side of the world with no idea what's going on.
Well, Crystal, thanks so much for your time. Continued success. You've gotten off to a good start, and let's hope we can keep it going.
Great. Thanks so much, Jason.
All right. We'll be right back after this short time out. It's the Bet America Radio Network.